researcher from Cameroon, and I'm also a senior fellow at the Melton Foundation. So today I'm going to be sharing my journey on working on a new or a better malaria diagnosis approach for my community. I would like to start with a little show of hands. So how many of you here have ever had malaria? Okay. And how many of you here have had family members who have had malaria before, or neighbors, or even people in your community? Okay. So then that means, I guess the topic is kind of familiar. So in order for you to understand how I started working on this, I would like to take you back to Yaoundé. So Yaoundé is the capital of Cameroon, and this is a place where I grew up in. I grew up in an environment where malaria was so common. It was as common as the common cold, like a disease that you get but you never die from. Despite the fact that malaria was so prevalent while I was a kid, or it was so common, it's something that really did not really catch my attention. Instead, I was interested in engineering. So I can remember challenging my brothers and sisters to build toy houses from local materials. When came time in high school for me to choose a career track, my dad, who was an engineer at the time, could not imagine me choosing anything apart from the sciences and engineering. So that is how I ended up choosing an engineering career track. I'm sure many of you here in India can relate to parents, families, uncles or aunties forcing you into careers that you don't like. So my quest for a good engineering education and an international experience led me to Ashesi University in Ghana. Ashesi University was established with a focus on Africa's problems. The university really pushes its students to explore solutions to some of the pressing problems that the continent is facing. While at Ashesi, it's there that I got to realize that other communities in Africa were not as fortunate as the community where I was coming from. Unlike the community where I was coming from, there were people in other communities that were actually dying from malaria. According to the World Health Organization, we have above 400,000 people every year who die from malaria. And every 2 minutes, there is a child that actually dies from malaria. In my freshman year at Ashesi, I met Hassan Silla. Hassan Silla at the time was a lab technician from a medical research lab in the Gambia. He was working on tuberculosis or TB diagnosis using conventional microscopy. Hassan told me that the microscopy method that they were using was time-consuming and that it wasn't reliable and that it was also tiring. After listening to Hassan's predicament, I started toying with the idea of actually using artificial intelligence to solve this issue. I thought it was going to be interesting and challenging enough for me and Hassan to come together to solve this problem. So with this energy, we decided to put our design thinking hats on. Then we went out to medical laboratories in Accra in order to research the problem. By the end of our first year, we had validated that this issue was actually real and it was a problem that needed a solution. Unfortunately for me, when I moved into my second year of college, I lost confidence in my ability to actually solve this problem. And it didn't help at the time because I was going through a nervous breakdown. I was going through a nervous breakdown from intense anxiety and depression. Those days, I can tell you, were very dark. I didn't think that I would ever find the joy to work on this project. Suddenly, what had seemed like an interesting project, an interesting application of artificial intelligence, was suddenly out of my reach. During these challenging times and difficult times, regular running and talking to the school counselor were the things that helped me. During this period, the salvation that we suddenly hoped for came for me in running and self-discipline. As a kid, I wasn't good at running, and I didn't believe that running was something that I would ever be good at. But during this particular period, I actually pushed myself. I ran. I can remember running and running and running. I ran until I could run like 15 kilometers without stopping. Suddenly, what had seemed like something that I couldn't do, I was suddenly able to do. And this gave me the confidence that I could actually take on anything. With this newfound confidence, I decided to pick up the pieces. I went back to the project that had once daunted me, that had once challenged me. So I decided to go back to building this artificial intelligence solution for diagnosis in laboratories. But this time around, I was not going to work on tuberculosis. I was going to work on malaria. Malaria because, as I told you, malaria is something that is very common in my community. Secondly, because the data itself was readily available for me to work on malaria. With that data, what we decided to do is, we started by developing a classifier that could categorize blood smear images of malaria patients. So for example, if you give this classifier just an algorithm, if you give it an image of a patient, it will tell you whether the patient is malaria positive or negative. After developing this solution, what we realized was that this solution had a gap and a lot to be improved. We wanted to build a solution that could actually give you the intensity of your infection. With that in mind, once I graduated from HealthStack, I decided to go back to Cameroon, my home country. So I took an internship in a medical research laboratory that focuses on malaria in order to continue the project there. So where is the project today? Today, we've been able to build our first malaria detector, so it can actually locate the parasite on a slide. We've also been able to build a mechanical prototype for our digital microscope. You can see me in the image trying to use this mechanical prototype. Alongside that, we've also been able to raise $1,200 in order to build the digital microscope. I would like to say that these funds will help us to build a microscope, and it will also help us to improve this malaria detector that we developed. To sum up, I think this work is important for my community because we are building a solution that is adapted to the context in which we find ourselves. Secondly, we also hope that this solution would inspire other young people in the community to actually build solutions to the problems that they see around them. You know, in life, failure and challenges will always arise. But I can assure you With perseverance and determination, you can only get two outcomes. It's either you succeed or you fail. And if you fail, you learn from the mistakes and you pick it from there. Finally, I would like to leave you with this word. I would like to urge you not only to pursue great work, but also pursue work that will challenge you and bring out the best version of yourself. Thank you.